Good communication is an essential part of any training network. With our recent Horizon 2020 funded project, Enabling Excellence, we performed an experiment to see how best to do communication within a project. Oh, that keeps it simple. We just put a mechanism, yeah. Communication in European projects is often framed in terms of communication with the outside world, but good communication within a project is essential.
The first idea that we wanted to get the students to think about when communicating was about the mind they are communicating to. What preconceptions, what values it has, what things it knows, what things it doesn't need to know in order to understand and receive your message.
Our communication experiment began initially during the project design. The first step was to ensure that all the students were recruited at the same time, which we were largely successful with, and this meant that they were having the same experience at roughly the same position during their contract.
The actual experiment, the residential workshop, started at the very beginning of the course. The first time the students and the supervisors met together was at this workshop. The exercises were to do with things like how to listen very carefully and to make sure you understood, to check that you had understood what a person was saying by feeding back to them what you understood them to say and for them to tell you whether you got it right or not. And a lot of exercises like that. There were exercises about negotiating. We had a day exploring what the supervisors expected from the students and the students expected from the supervisors. That was quite hairy, but it was actually quite important in the way it set people free to talk about it. The exercises were designed so that they would be quite difficult, and the pairs were between students and supervisors, so they would equally watch each other struggling. And so at the end of the exercise, they did get to know each other extraordinarily well.
The first workshop created a sense of collective project identity and meant that everybody got to know each other as people first and as scientists second. This had a knock-on benefit throughout the project and facilitated communication between people. Following the workshops, the next step was to help the students develop their presentation skills.
The big concept early on was to get across the concept of storytelling. But the students, by and large, didn't like it because storytelling seems to be about being on the stage, being an actor, being sort of artificial. But real storytelling is about getting inside the mind of the person you're trying to talk to.
Which is why it's nice to have a story to take a person on a journey and have that beginning, middle and end. So storytelling is important.
The lectures about storytelling really didn't work. They listened, they sort of agreed, but didn't make any difference to what they did.
Good.
What did work was towards the end of the second year, when they had real presentations to make in front of real audiences.
So, hello everybody. I'm Manuela Melon.
At that point, they were quite interested in help.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear Ed. Welcome to my talk about how
they were starting to think very clearly about what responses they wanted from the different parts of their story.
What did we learn? First of all, don't provide the communication tools and then expect the students to communicate. Instead, provide them with motivation to communicate, and then the communication follows naturally. When we try to impose communication tools like video conferencing, project management tools like FreeCamp or shared cloud space, these generally weren't effective. The times that the students communicated best was when they could clearly see the benefit for their own projects. This included primarily joint papers between different partners, and for external communication, giving oral presentations at conferences.
Near the end of the project, the whole ITN, supervisors and students, went to Japan for 2 weeks. There were many reasons for this, but one was to have the students present to their Japanese counterparts in the different institutions we visited. We organised 6 joint seminars across the country in traditional and modern universities, industrial partners like GEO and NEC, and in front of politicians and very senior Japanese policymakers.
And then with the surfactant assembly, we get the different
and they had the skills to reach across a huge cultural divide.
And then what we want is to enlarge it to make it a triangle with the height.
Big electromagnetic outside in order to further improve the connectivity.
The Japanese trip allowed the students to put into practice what they learned in terms of communication.
Studies that make Chris, Elvis, and where is human.
Another experiment that we tried in the project was that of grand challenges. We asked the students to come up with an idea of something they wanted to do and were very motivated for, which put into practice the communication and business training that they'd received. The idea was for them to communicate with other public, with the external world in some way. For some of the students this was quite a difficult exercise and was frustrating for the time it took them away from their research.
Some of them organised a workshop at a children's science fair.
Lo enrollamos y hacemos así como un tubo. Lo que tenemos son... Claro, yo voy a juntarme contigo. Y aquí que se junta el conmigo.
Another student wanted to tell the lesbian and gay community that they could play a role, they could have a career in science. And he developed a television series called Sassy Science. Some of the episodes he put on YouTube.
World famous, worldwide famous, world renowned Watson and Crick.
One student developed a card game, Chemi Project, in which there were chemical structures on the cards, and the game was to collect cards from which you could build useful molecules.
The molecular weights of single molecules.
It's been developed and it's for sale on Amazon.
This number, 5,000.
Another student wanted to express the concepts of science through art.
Bar, small bar, and big bar. The space of the stairs, the circle.
Another student is filming experiments in Spanish because it's his view that in Spanish there isn't enough video explaining science to young children.
Moreno se encuentra principalmente en la piel.
A mí me huele a suco de limón.
Limoncello.
Okay. One of the main lessons that we took from this communication experiment is that you should try and design your project to be as flexible as possible. That way, when the project's running, you can adapt it to the needs of the individual students. By creating an environment where ideas can flow freely and communication is open, then you can get the best out of the students and develop them as best as possible. And by putting communication at the very centre of the project, this had knock-on effects and benefits for every aspect.